Now, here's one for you. Of course, yesterday, the former presenter of Country File, Miriam O'Reilly, who lost her job when the TV show was moved to a prime-time slot, won her action against the BBC. An industrial tribunal upheld the case on grounds of ageism and victimisation. The BBC said it accepted the findings. Your thoughts are welcome this morning on this story. It's all over the papers today. Just been reading a few bits, certainly on the front of the Mail and page 27. Country Foul is the headline. Ages BBC to pay up for sacking wrinkly host. 53. Are our TV presenters the right age? Let us know your thoughts on this morning. 01642 22 5511. I'm sure Mal Fletcher, who is a social commentator, has been following with some interest. Good morning, Mal.
Good morning, Neil.
Thanks for joining us on the programme today. What do you make, just standing back from the events, really? It's extraordinary to witness this, isn't it? Because presumably it means ramifications for what will happen in terms of on-air presentation in the future.
Yes, it will. It is extraordinary, as you say, but it isn't really surprising. I mean, more than a third of British people are aged over 50, and yet nowhere near a third of media programming is fronted by people in that bracket. And I think there are two issues, Neil. The first is that we live in an increasingly visual culture, you know, with the explosion of the high-speed internet, mobile technology. It's what I call the culture of the screen. And as Malcolm Muggeridge, the Paxman of his day, once famously said, the camera always lies. It can make someone who is rather shallow seem deep, and vice versa. And there's also the issue of speed. In a digital age, I think your listeners will agree that, you know, most of us want our information quickly, and we don't have as much time to sit back and deliberate on what that might mean in the bigger picture. And that cuts down our time for reflection, which, as it happens, is what older people happen to do best.
Do you think it's going to be a difficult predicament for producers and bosses of TV programmes in the future now? Because obviously, you know, there's a certain amount, you've got to try and keep the format fresh. You know, you can change the set, and part of the equation inevitably has to be change the presentation.
Yes, it may be a challenge, but I think that's what producers are good at, you know. Good producers know how to overcome challenges, by definition. And, of course, there are more young people alive today than older people, so on one level it shouldn't surprise us that younger people want to look at others who are like them and have similar experiences. But in the UK, some highly gifted middle-aged people might appear in the news now and again, but there's hardly any fronting any other programming. And I think we lose out as an audience. We don't have the opportunity, for example, to see how singular events fit into a longer-term continuum. We can't get a sense of history. And that's what older people happen to bring best. They add, if you like, wisdom to our knowledge.
Are the rules different regardless of what programme we're talking about? News is always a good example sometimes. There has been criticism of the BBC previously of not employing, or certainly hiring, older female newsreaders. And you see a lot of kind of older male newsreaders put next to I need to be careful how I word this, but certainly younger, more, sometimes people may describe photogenic younger lady. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do, and I think it is hard to be sensitive in the way we say it and yet still be honest.
Yeah.
You're right. But, you know, look, there are highly gifted middle-aged people sometimes in the news arena, especially, for example, political reporters, where age adds to the value of what they bring. But there are hardly any more senior people than that in the news. In documentary, for example, we get older people sometimes appearing as commentators on programs. Some sometimes get their own programs, documentaries, but most often they're drawn from the world of academia. And pardon me for saying it, but generally speaking, academics are notoriously poor communicators. So we are seeing some older people playing a role, but only within a very limited range of expertise and experience.
Do you think in the future then inevitably there's a certain amount of inevitable change really here, because the cross-representation of society is not being reflected on the HD screen in the corner?
Yes, and certainly that's true in an age where life expectancy, Neil, is increasing all the time through breakthroughs in medical science. We need to make room so that older people can contribute in a more meaningful and less peripheral way. And because media industries don't just reflect community values but reinforce them, I think they should be leading the way.
I was watching a programme over Christmas which aired on an evening. I thought it was tokenism, possibly on the BBC's part. I may have got this wrong, but there was Gloria Hunniford, there was Jenny Bond, and there was Angela Rippon, all fronting one financial programme, which I found slightly strange, really.
Yeah, well, I didn't see it, but perhaps, there's a bit of quota thinking there. We'd better put everybody into one show and sort of get our quota across. I don't know what the thinking was there. I don't know the program. But I think, maybe part of the reason we're not seeing older people is that sometimes in our culture we associate the meaning of life with holding down a job, paying a mortgage, raising a family. When those things are done, what contribution is there worth making? And I think that robs us, as I said, of the opportunity to learn from those who've been there, done that, have a greater perspective on events. It's been said that history is cyclic, and then those who don't learn the lessons of history are doomed to repeat its mistakes. And I think we can learn a lot from having older people in many different genres of media production.
What changes do you expect to see over the next couple of years when it comes to our TV news and what's happening in terms of documentaries and other programmes?
Well, I think we will see now that this case has been aired so publicly, a change in the fronting of certain programs. I think we will see an increasing number of older faces in, for example, news. Hopefully, though, they will find their way into the top level of presentation rather than simply being, on the smaller digital channels, which not too many people really see, proportionately speaking. I think also there's a great opportunity here for the BBC to use more middle-aged and older people in documentary making, and not just in commenting, but in presenting of these things and bringing an authoritative voice outside of academia. I think we might also see a lot more older people fronting some of these talent shows. I think that, there's so much that people over 55, over 65 have to offer from their experience in the entertainment industry that could really help younger performers to get a good start.